This is another nice report from Project Drawdown on a very important topic, and that's about reducing black carbon. The tagline is that reducing black carbon is a triple win for climate, health, and well-being. Health is just physical health, your ability to walk around, run around, and be healthy. But well-being is a lot about how you feel mentally, because you may be physically very fit but not feeling great, which can affect quality of life, productivity, relations, and overall action, let's say, towards climate and society and so on. So globally, exposure to unhealthy levels of particulate matter, including black carbon, is estimated to cause between 3 and 6 million excess deaths every year. That's a large range, but attribution is always tricky. Nonetheless, there is no doubt at all that pollution, PM 2.5, particulate matter 2.5, which gets into bloodstream and brain and lungs, and black carbon, of course, which can kill you, are everywhere. And this is black carbon and dust deposited on Nigardsbreen glacier in Norway. So this obviously reduces the albedo. You can see the brightness of the glacier is greatly reduced, which means it will absorb more sunlight and melt faster and faster, right? So nasty thing. Anthropogenic sources of black carbon emissions. There are two sources we'll see. One includes wildfires, the other one doesn't, so it can make some difference. But nonetheless, the robust conclusions are that residential emissions of black carbon are almost 50%. This comes largely from largely from burning biomass for cooking stoves, and that should be a low-hanging fruit in terms of reducing black carbon and improving health and well-being. But there are cultural and socio-technical transition issues that we will talk about in a minute. Transportation, of course, industry and energy industries. Obviously, energy contributes to transportation and industry as well, and others like wildfires. Here, black carbon and other pollutants being emitted from the burning of dry rice paddy in India. Now the season of monsoon is still going on. In a month or 6 weeks comes to an end, harvesting, and then comes the season of burning crop residues, which is a big debate every year, but solution has not been found because of various political, socio-economic, and other issues, right? So just to run through some data, black carbon emissions broken down by sector for the top 20 highest emitting countries in 2017. Data goes back a bit, but two sources, PKU Fuel and SEDS GBD maps. You can see where they come from and how they can differ. So this list has China on top, China here, India is second here as well, Nigeria, but Indonesia shows up here, Brazil. So you can see there are differences here. Let's see, Democratic Republic of Congo is down here, and the sectors are again energy, industry, others, residential, and transportation. Rich countries, if you look at the United States, a lot of it comes from transportation, not so much from residential. You could have heating, so emit black carbon coming from there. Energy is very low as well, and industry is smaller. So it depends on where you are as to the relative contribution of the sources. So without worrying about the differences in the rankings by the two data sources, you can go and see what the differences are, but you get the idea that China and India, large populations, high population density, lots of black carbon, and that's bad news. While fire-related black carbon emissions for the top 20 highest emitting countries in 2017. This is from PKU Fuel again. So annual emissions, Democratic Republic of Congo jumps up here as the king of wildfire emissions, and you can see in the total it was down here. So the numbers are an order of magnitude different here in terms of kilotons. Here over 1,000, here hundreds, but nonetheless you can see the difference between where the emission sources are based on where you are. Co-benefits of implementing clean cooking across sub-Saharan Africa. Should we really need data for this? Well, how to bring about change, incentivizing, financing, legislation, etc. depends on whether it's domestic, industrial, and so on. Improved climate, 586 million tons of CO2 equivalent emissions that would be eliminated by implementing clean cooking solutions. Healthier people, 463,000 is the number of premature deaths that could be avoided every year by implementing clean fuel and cook stoves in sub-Saharan Africa. Better quality of life, 365 hours would be the time a family can spend per year on economic, education, and recreational activities when they no longer have to gather fuel. So that's well-being as well. Save money, 78 billion is the net amount saved per year by improvements in health, productivity, and reduced emissions. Okay, fortunately, solutions that can rapidly reduce black carbon emissions by the end of this decade are really available and readily available. By implementing the right policies, deploying targeted interventions in hotspots, and redirecting climate finance, policymakers and funders can mitigate the climate effects of black carbon while saving millions of lives and trillions of dollars. Below are key recommendations to achieve these aims based on the findings of this report. Urgently implement clean cooking solutions. Providing clean cooking fuels and technologies in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia, especially in the hotspots of the Indo-Gangetic Plains, Nigeria and Uganda, can significantly reduce black carbon emissions. Okay, countries with low penetration of clean cooking fuel must urgently develop policies that make clean cooking a priority for health and climate. Target transportation to reduce current and prevent future emissions. So there is retrofitting possible, switching to EVs, and so on and so forth. Reduce black carbon from shipping industry, which always gets attention but not easy to regulate, from what I understand. Lots of issues when how this industry works, but they do have significant contribution to black carbon, and their contrails get a lot of attention as well. Regulate air quality. This is a broad agenda that everybody is struggling with. Lots of times there are regulations in the book, but enforcement is an issue, especially in developing countries. And sometimes governments sacrifice air quality for growing the economy by producing things and exporting them. Countries want to build things for the rich countries because that's a way to make living, increase GDP, increase standards of living, but quality of life can suffer. Include black carbon in nationally determined contributions and the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. As nations review their NDCs by 2025, they must incorporate black carbon reduction efforts to meet climate and well-being targets. Black carbon is discussed a lot on my channel under Bending the Curve, where the short-lived pollutants are shown to reduce warming very rapidly in the short term and have all these co-benefits. Improve black carbon measurements and estimates. Data, monitoring, reporting, verification, always critical for making sure that targets are met as regulations require. And pathways to reduce black carbon: rapidly adopt cooking fuels and target hotspots, as we said. So here you have India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nigeria, Uganda, Ethiopia, and South Africa, and so on. Promote cleaner transportation to reduce and prevent emissions. You can see some numbers here. In the United States, vehicular emissions of black carbon have decreased by 60% in the past 30 years due to regulations focused on particulate emissions from diesel vehicles. In these countries, black carbon is expected to decline even further due to the rapid deployment of hybrid and electric vehicles. Of course, you also need clean energy to charge these vehicles and batteries and so on. Thirdly, enact air quality policies and establish a monitoring system. Again, monitoring, data, reporting, verification. 3.4 Opportunities for integrating black carbon in national climate plans and funding initiatives. Surprisingly, only 12 countries have explicitly addressed black carbon in their nationally determined contributions. Costa Rica, Chile, Canada, Mexico, Zimbabwe, Micronesia, United States, Ghana, Uganda, Bangladesh, Nigeria, and Eswatini. But many countries may not be enforcing the regulations, but when the reporting comes up in 2025, it will be obvious what they did about these goals under NDCs. Okay. 3.5 Finally, improvement in black carbon measurements and estimates. One can hardly overemphasize this. Limitations in measurement techniques and a lack of consensus on what constitutes black carbon and how to measure this. So protocols are needed that are accepted so that NDC verifications actually do work in a uniform framework, right? Conclusions of this report, which is served in bits and pieces. It's not one report, you have to go and click on each section. Black carbon is a triple threat as it warms the planet while severely degrading human and environmental health. In mitigating black carbon emissions, both immediate and sustained benefits can be achieved. These encompass improvements in public health outcomes, minimization of economic losses, reduction in climate warming, and the safeguarding of critical ecosystems, notably the Arctic and Himalayan regions, where black carbon can really accelerate the snow ice albedo feedback. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has called for action to reduce black carbon emissions as part of a broader strategy to mitigate climate change, yet global efforts have lagged and emissions reductions efforts are nowhere close to where they need to be to reach existing targets. Rapidly reducing black carbon is possible using existing technologies and solutions. However, it requires a coordinated effort on local, national, and international levels. Countries must seize the opportunity to incorporate black carbon reductions into their nationally determined contributions, or NDCs, as they submit an updated NDC in 2025, because we are not meeting the targets, global warming targets of 1.5 or 2 degrees C by 2100 with the current NDCs. Simultaneously, climate finance needs to prioritize projects that also target black carbon along with other climate pollutants. By addressing black carbon emissions, we can take significant strides towards mitigating climate change while also improving the lives of more than 2 billion people and saving trillions of dollars in economic losses resulting from black carbon. Okay, so very nice report. I have obviously been brief as usual, but you can easily go to the website and read further details. There is some nice data on further hotspots and where the black carbon emissions are decreasing and so on. Okay, so I will leave it here.